Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video. The championship is back, so we are back with predictions. There's no more international breaks until March. Get in there. The championship is back though, and there's some big fixtures to bring to you today. Just before we get into this video, guys, make sure you've liked, make sure you've subscribed, and I haven't introduced my guest yet. How are you doing, Sophie?
Very well, now that the international break's over for about 4 months.
Yes.
Let's get back to club football.
Absolutely. Let's start with Friday night's game. A stream I'll be doing. QPR versus Luton Town. Two of my teams that I think just could sneak into the playoffs this year. I think QPR, they're looking strong. I think I expected them to do well at the start of the season. Luton Town, they're just solid in the championship now, and they're one of those teams that if they could just be a bit more consistent, they'll get in there. I don't want to start with a draw. I think both teams are good, and I was tempted to go for a draw, but just to shake it up, I'm going to go for a win, and I'm going to go QPR 1, Luton Town 2.
Okay, yeah, I was also tempted to say a draw, to be honest. I think it is going to be a good match-up. I like the way both teams play football, but I'm going to have to back the home team here. So I'm going to say QPR 2-1 win.
QPR 2-1. Interesting. We'll move on to the next game, the lunchtime Saturday game. A game I'll be going to, Sheffield United versus Coventry. And it's quite hard to predict at the start of the season for this kind of game. You'd think Sheffield United should be the favourites because obviously they've just come down, they're at home. But Coventry City have been going about their business really well. Obviously the last game before the international break was a thriller. We beat Bristol City. We need to get some good away wins on the board. We've only beaten newly promoted teams away so far, Hull and Blackpool. It'd be great to get a win here. Go on, I'll give it to us. I think Sheffield United will come strong towards the end of the season, but for now, I just think they're a little bit shaky. I don't think they've won too many games recently. So Sheffield United 1, Coventry City 2.
I'm going to have to go with the same. I'm going to have to back the boys. I do think it's going to be a hard game, and I'm gutted to not be going to this because I do like going to Bramall Lane. But yeah, Sheffield United, they're not in the best of form, and we are in good form. Mainly at home, but I think this could be a good away win. So I'm going to back us 2-1.
It's a big game, that one. Next up, 3 PM kickoff. So we've got Bristol City versus Blackburn. Now, I saw Bristol City just before the international break. They need to bounce back strong from that because they were so flaky at the CBS Arena. And yeah, they were playing 10 men and they still lost the game. Blackburn, a bit patchy. Just before the international break, they beat Sheffield United 3-1. But let's remember, they lost 7-0 to Fulham just before that. So two teams that can blow hot and cold here. I'm going to go for a draw. Bristol City 1, Blackburn Rovers 1.
See, I'm not going to look too much into that 7-0 because Fulham are a very good team, and when they get going, they can just blow teams away. So I'm going to back a Blackburn win. I do think it's going to be a fairly tight game, but Bristol City, when we played them, I was not impressed by them at all. How can you bottle a lead against 10 men? That is very, very poor. Great game for us though, but I think they're going to lose again. So I'm going to say 3-2. Good game again, but Blackburn win 3-2.
3-2 to Blackburn. The next one, Fulham versus Barnsley, and you could get a real mauling here. Mitrovic is already up to 20 goals. If he keeps this up, he could get well over 40 this season. He is a monster, and he scored for Serbia against Portugal in the international break. Who's going to stop this man? Barnsley will be hoping they can, but I don't think they will. I'm going to go for Fulham 3-1.
I was going to say 3-1 as well, so let's just spice it up. I'll say 4-1. I do think there is going to be goals, and as you said, Mitrovic is absolutely on fire. Like 20 goals by November, that's ridiculous. So I think he's going to get a few, and Barnsley are looking very, very poor. So I think there's only going to be one winner for me, and that's going to be Fulham 4-1. 4-1.
Next up, Huddersfield Town versus West Bromwich Albion. This is an interesting matchup, this, because I know some people on paper would look at this and say West Brom should win, but West Brom haven't been perfect so far this season, and speaking to a couple of West Brom fans here and there, not many of them are convinced that they could even battle for the top 2 this season. They'd just take the playoffs because even some of their wins haven't been that convincing. West Brom have the capability, the players, and possibly the manager to really get going, but things just haven't quite clicked yet. And you look at Huddersfield and you think on their day they're quite good. So I fancy Huddersfield to get a draw here, 1-1 again.
Yeah, I fancy a 1-1 as well. I was going to say I'll sit on the fence because, yeah, it is going to be quite a tight one to call. West Brom, they went through a stage where they were winning, losing, but they've just seemed to put like an end to that now. And with Huddersfield, they do seem to pick up a few draws, so I'm going to have to back a 1-1 as well.
Yeah. Next up, we go to the KC, Hull City versus Birmingham City. An interesting matchup, this one, because they both need a win. They're both a bit patchy. Birmingham, They seem to blow hot and cold. They go through good spells, then bad spells. I think just before the international break, they were having a little resurgence again, but there's a couple of defeats here and there, and you just think Birmingham, if they could be convincing, if they could be more consistent, they'd be much further up the table, because on their day, they're really good. Hull City only turn up in 1 in 6 games, so I'm going to back Birmingham here. I think it's the logical thing to do. Hull City 0, Birmingham City 1.
Yeah, I'm also going to back a Blues win. I think, to be honest, they're not in the worst of form, and I think they are going to push on up the table now. With Hull, I wasn't very impressed when we went to their ground, and I know they did just pick up a win before the international break, but that was against Barnsley, so that's not a great result, to be honest. It doesn't really count. So saying that, I think, yeah, Scott Hogan seems to be on fire for Blues, so I think he's going to score again. I'm going to say 2-0 to Blues.
2-0. Next up, the Riverside, Middlesbrough versus Millwall. It's interesting now. Middlesbrough have got Chris Wilder. What kind of team are they going to be? You think they might be a bit more robust, a bit harder to beat, but Millwall are quite decent as well. So another tight game, but I just don't like going for draws. So this game could swing either way, but I'll back Chris Wilder's Middlesbrough because they're at home, 2-1.
See, I'm actually going to back a Millwall win here. Every single time I put a bet on Millwall, they win 1-0. And they're going to be in my bet this weekend, so 1-0 Millwall.
1-0 Millwall. Okay, interesting. Next up to Deepdale, Preston North End versus Cardiff City. Now Cardiff just starting to turn a little bit of a corner. If they could just put a couple of wins together, then they could just start moving away from that bottom 3, bottom 4. Because at the moment, I look at the relegation battle, I think Derby are definitely going to be in the mix. Barnsley should be in the mix unless they can climb away. Hull and Peterborough. And then just above that, you've got the likes of Cardiff and Preston, which you think, just be a bit more consistent and you won't be in it. So, yeah, 2 teams that could really do with a win to climb away from it. I'll go for Preston though. Preston at home, just a little bit more solid than Cardiff. Preston 1-0.
Yeah, I can't see there being masses of goals in this game. To be fair, I think 2 boring sides going at it, so I'm not expecting a great result. So it could be a 0-0 or a 1-0, and I'm just going to back a 0-0.
0-0. Next up to the Medeski, Reading versus Nottingham Forest. Quite an interesting matchup. Reading seem to be a really hard team to predict because they do pull decent results out of the bag here and there, but I think they're looking like they could head towards a mid-table, if not lower half finish. As for Forest, their form has been quite good over the last sort of 8 to 10 games, so if they can keep that going, they'll continue to fly towards the playoffs. I think I do fancy Forest here. Reading 1, Forest 2.
Yeah, I'm actually going to say the same. I think the bookies will have Reading being the home team to be the favourites, but for me, yeah, Forest aren't in terrible form and Reading are pretty inconsistent, so it could go either way. But I'm going to have to back a 2-1 Forest win too. 2-1
Forest win. Next up to Stoke City versus Peterborough. Peterborough, by the way, haven't touched on them a lot. I think at home and goal scoring wise, that could be what keeps them up this season. But I look at them on the road, and particularly in this kind of game, I just think, I don't fancy you to get anything. But I still think you might stay up. I look at Stoke and I think they should win this game. If they don't, then are they really? You know, it's one of those games where you have to win if you want to be a top 6 team. So I think Stoke will win this one, 2-0.
Yeah, I think Stoke need to get the win here. This needs to be a convincing win as well if they're going to be pushing for the playoffs. And I think it is. I think it's going to be 3-0 because, yeah, Peterborough, they're not very good on the road at all. They do need to try and just draw their ways. But I don't think they're going to do it against Stoke, so 3-0.
Next up we go to the Liberty, Swansea City versus Blackpool. This is quite an exciting game, to be honest. 2 teams that I've been impressed by so far this season. They both had slow starts, but they're both starting to rise to the top. And both had a little bit of a battle for the playoffs lately. If they could just be more consistent, like I've said with a lot of teams, because there's a big chunk of teams. I mean, the playoff battle goes down to about 15th. So if you could just put a couple wins together, you're going to be in there this season. I fancy Blackpool here. I just really like Blackpool. I think other than Coventry, if my team wasn't in the division this year, I'd be looking at Blackpool saying I'm cheering them on because they're the underdogs. So Swansea 0, Blackpool 1.
Okay, I think there's going to be a few goals in this because, yeah, both teams like to kind of go at it. I was impressed by Swansea, to be honest, their possession-based style football. It was pretty good. And Blackpool, they've just impressed me over this season. I didn't expect them to kind of play so well and get the results they're getting. So I think it's going to be 2 evenly matched, 2-2.
2-2, interesting. Yep. Next up we go to Pride Park, Derby County versus Bournemouth. Obviously we need to touch on what's happened at Derby County this week. Another 9 points deducted means that they are staring League One football in the face. It's all a bit depressing for the Derby fans. I do have a lot of sympathy for them. I know other clubs will be laughing, other fans will be laughing, but ultimately I do have some sympathy for Derby County. And do you know what's interesting? It's bottom versus top, but I don't think it's that straightforward, because Derby County, without the points deduction, would be a little bit further up the table. And when they played Stoke after the first points deduction, they just had all that anger, all that energy, and they just put it into that game and they won. And I think this game, although Bournemouth will be massive favourites, there's going to be a reaction from Derby, and Derby are going to win. Derby are going to beat Bournemouth 2-1.
Wow. See, I can't imagine them getting a win. I could see a draw playing out, just because, yeah, Derby like to draw their games. I think, yeah, it just depends how their team's going to kind of bounce back from this another points deduction. It's a blow for the fans. You do feel, from being Coventry City supporters, we've been in a similar situation, and it's rough on the fans. So I do feel for the Derby fans, and what a game to kind of go at it straight after that. Oh, good after back Bournemouth though, because they're in very, very good form. They're looking almost unstoppable at the moment. So 2-0 Bournemouth.
2-0 Bournemouth. I was going to say as well, that's the kind of game which could swing either way. If Bournemouth get things going, if they get an early goal, they could run away with this game. But if Derby can put loads of fight and energy into this, they could win. So it'll be an interesting game. That wraps up the predictions for this weekend's games, guys. Let us know your comments down below. Some fascinating fixtures coming up. Make sure you've dropped a like on this video, subscribed if you're new, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.